Playing the role of Sheriff Alex Romero, please welcome Nestor Carbonell. Playing the role of Bradley Martin, please welcome Nicola Peltz. Playing the role of Dylan Massett, please welcome Max Terrio. Please welcome co-creator and executive producer Carlton Hughes. Please welcome our other co-creator and executive producer, Carrie Aaron. Playing the role of Norman Bates, please welcome Freddie Highmore. And playing the role of Norma Bates, please welcome Vera Farmiga. This first question can be for any of you. As I watched this show, I couldn't help but think that in many ways this is a spiritual kin to Twin Peaks and X-Files in the best possible way. And so my first question is, what makes the Pacific Northwest so good at being so creepy?
It's misty.
It rains a lot, really, isn't it?
You know, I think that for us, we wanted to create this town that looked really beautiful on the outside, but that underneath it was a very different story, and that, you know, the people in this town seem very nice, but they all harbored these dark secrets. And
which is very Twin Peaks.
It's very Twin Peaks. We pretty much ripped off Twin Peaks. That's pretty much, yes, if you wanted to get that confession, the answer is yes, we did. No, I mean, Carrie and I love that show, and it only lasted 30 episodes, and so we thought we would do the 70 that we're missing.
Talk about the origins of this show. As I was telling someone that I was going to host this panel and, you know, talk about Bates Motel, I said to them, if somebody had come to me and said, hey, do you want to do a series, you know, based around, you know, Psycho and this and that, I would say, you can't do it. And so I'm just ultra impressed the way you guys have pulled this off for the first 10 episodes of it. How did this begin, and what made you think you could actually pull this off?
I don't necessarily.
No, I mean, basically, we were approached by Universal Television. Universal owns the rights to the Psycho franchise, and you know, they basically said, you know, would you guys be interested in doing this for television? And they also helped put Carrie and I together, and you know, it was kind of a fantastic instant sort of love at first sight, you know, marriage as writers. And you know, I had this one subset of ideas, Carrie had another subset of ideas, and it was just, we stuck them together, and there was something really intriguing about it. And even though it was kind of a high degree of difficulty dive, you know, yes, there are many ways it could go wrong. Just this idea of like the kind of unanswered questions of the movie were really intriguing to us. Like, who was Norma Bates? I mean, who was this woman who ended up like stuffed in a fruit cellar in the movie, you know? And what was her relationship like with her son? And what if they had what if Norman had a brother? And you know, just the idea of sort of telling the tragedy of sort of knowing that in a general sense things were not going to end well for these characters, but along the way we would hopefully fall in love with them, and we wanted the audience to kind of hope against hope that these characters would not meet their inevitable fate.
Vera and Freddie, the heart of the show is clearly this mother-son relationship.
Why is everyone laughing? We were having this debate about whether, I think that's what's great about Bates Motel. Everyone has a different interpretation of the relationship between Norma and Norman, for example, and what side of the line that falls on. And I think even amongst us, there's a difference in opinion at times as to if it is slightly dodgy or not. And I think people laugh because they slightly
project onto. I think there's a lot of projection going on.
Well, that leads to the question I was going to ask, which is, you play, you know, one of the most famous cinematic characters in Hollywood history. You play one of the most famous cinematic corpses in film history. And so I guess my question is what makes this relationship so compelling to watch, and it is compelling to watch, and how do you not play that future? And maybe the future of the TV show is different somehow than the future of the movie. Who's to say? But how do you get such iconic images out of your head as you play these two characters?
I don't know. I wasn't feeling hassled by the term iconic in the way that Freddie might have felt hassled, given he's stepping into some pretty extraordinary shoes. Iconic for me is kind of the root word of it. Icon as in religious painting, as in Madonna and Child. And for me, it's just how I approach her as the nurturing Madonna, the breastfeeding Madonna.
Even when it's no longer appropriate.
The worried and, the stricken Madonna, the bereft Madonna. And it's like, that's...
Yeah.
She's expecting you to answer, Freddie.
Yes, I guess who would Norman be in that scenario?
And talking about, let me just finish, because I was saying, I wasn't feeling hassled by the term, but that's not to say that I'd be lying if I didn't admit that initially I was a little off-put about the interdependence to Psycho. I felt like the purist in me was skeptical, because there's a lot of things, like Carl said, that can go wrong. But, God, they got me on page 2 when with the dialogue in the same breath, Norma turns to Norman and says, "You're such an asshole." I love you, Norman. And it's the exhilaration of feeling that pendulum swing of contradiction that Norma is simultaneously, perhaps being interpreted as twisted and nurturing. And it's like when you encounter sophistication in the creation of a female character, you just, you thank the writers and you claim it. And you've got 2 lunatic composers here that really seem to know the secret, scary places of a mother's heart. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I wasn't feeling hassled by the term icon as far as my character being a spectral image of a corpse. How about you?
I guess the nice thing about playing, well, hopefully, unless we completely kind of rejig Psycho, is that I won't die. I think it would be a big shock anyway if Norman just ended up dying. Like, well, no, she's got to be there at the end. So in that way, there's a certain amount of confidence that you have, knowing that you hopefully will be around for a while. Whereas everyone else, at some point or another, not that I would wish that upon anyone, but might be slightly more nervous. So in that way, it was kind of good to have Norman there as the iconic character. It was nice also setting it in the contemporary setting, because I think that gave us all a certain amount of freedom to reimagine that kind of that narrative.
You wonderful segue to my next question, because I was going to ask about the timing of this series. Obviously, we are in present day. And yet one of the things I noticed, and I assume this was intentional, was there are a lot of nods to the past. There's a record player in the house. When Norman is watching TV, it's often an old black and white program, which is an old producer trick to save money, but I felt it was more than that. I felt it was more than that here, that there was a nod, a timelessness almost. Was that something you guys wanted? Was that something a director brought to it? Where did that feeling come from? And talk about it.
It wasn't super conscious at the beginning. It really evolved, and I think it started with when very first, we're thinking about Norma and Norman, just literally like what they sound like when they talk to each other, what their cadences are, and how they relate to each other. And for some reason, a 40s movie couple kind of seemed like the way to go. I don't know why. But, sort of when you think of like a Myrna Loy and David Niven, or, just 2 people who were just really good together on some level, and they kind of work together as a unit. And so then you kind of take that sort of beautiful thing, and then you can put all the other Oedipal knife stuff around it, and it's kind of intriguing. It's kind of an interesting mix. But I think it's interesting because we never sat down and said we want it to be timeless. But it's sort of like every creative. Like when Tucker Gates came on, the director,
he responded to that a lot.
He totally did, yeah.
And one of the we basically decided early on that although we were going to tell our own story, that it couldn't really be Psycho without the iconic motel in the house, and those things needed to exist. And in the same way that Christopher Nolan sort of did his own take on the Batman story, but he's kept the Bat suit, the Bat car, the Bat cave, certain icon, Alfred. I mean, all those things. And so we felt like those were kind of critical parts of the iconography of the show that we needed to maintain. And then that also kind of led to a certain timelessness quality, and Tucker responded to it in the script. And so we kind of felt like Norman and Norma's relationship sort of existed out of time, and that they were kind of a 40s couple, and that they, in a perfect world, they could be together and be really happy, but they can't be because that relationship collides with the modern world in a million ways, and that was a really interesting dynamic to us.
Whenever a show works, you can't envision anyone else being the characters than the actors who've been cast. You've got this amazing cast up here now. When you wrote it, how similar were they to the actors who are playing them now, and who maybe surprised you and changed your view of the character?
This has literally never happened before in my career, and it will, I'm sure, never happen again, but we got everybody we wanted. Like, it was unbelievable. I mean, right from the get-go, when Carrie and I started talking about the character and we were creating the character, immediately sort of came up, well, the perfect person for this would be Vera Farmiga, but of course she'll never do it. But let's think of it for Vera, because that kind of helped us. And then April Webster, our genius casting director, basically said, you have to get on a Skype call with Freddie Highmore. And right from the get-go, we kind of met him on Skype first, and we were like, well, he's great. And then
he's kind of perfect.
We auditioned other actors, and we realized, no, I mean, he was up here. I mean, he was in his own category, and there was no one else who even came close. And then, April had also suggested, well, you have to, I love this guy, Max Theriault, and we met him. We actually, again, we Skyped with him also, and he was fantastic. And I think that, I really think, I've heard so much from the audience, people saying, God, we love Dylan. He was kind of the surprise in the story, yes, shut up, Max. And Nicola, she actually came in and auditioned, but we just were like, wow, she's perfect. She was just that vision of the role. And then Nestor and I, of course, had worked together on Lost, and so when we started talking about when we started talking about the sheriff, we'd be like, well, he should be like Nestor Carbonell. And then we actually got him. So. And then the Olivia story was really kind of interesting because we got this murky, homemade video that came from Manchester, England, and we could barely sort of see the actress, but it was well, she's really good. And then we just said, well, we kind of liked her best, and A&E approved her and believed in us on that. And then she flew into Vancouver, and she got off the plane, and she was luminous. It was oh my God. It was she looked like she was out of a Renaissance painting or something. And so it was just, I think that there's this thing that happens as hard as you try on television, and you can write a good script and you can have great intentions, but this alchemy has to occur. And I feel like that's the thing that you can't predict, and I feel like that's what happened when we assembled this troupe of actors, and that's really what blessed our show.
Nestor, your character is very mysterious at the beginning of the show. You don't know if he's a good guy, is he a bad guy, sort of running this weird, strange, illegal operation here in town. What did they tell you? Did you just take a leap of faith because it was Carlton, and you'd worked with him? Did they sort of let you know where the character was going? When you have to play a character of mystery, is it also a mystery to the actor?
Well, it certainly was for me on Lost.
It still is.
It still is. I don't know. No.
Don't spoil anything else.
It's only been over for 3 years.
We're gonna do more, right? No, but I enjoyed that process. I really did. At first, I was like, why am I saying this? And after a while, I was like, I just gotta invent why I have to say this in my head. But I really learned to love that process. And Carlton sort of, he told me when at first, actually, when the casting approached me, they said, well, they're interested in you for a few episodes. And I said, yeah, of course, it's Carlton. Yeah, I'd love to work with him again. I didn't hear it for about a month, and then about 4 weeks later, something like that, I asked my agent, hey, are we going to do those episodes, or what happened? And then they called and said, well, no, now we want to do more and make you a regular in the second season. And I go, great. And Carlton sent me the first 6 scripts, and I was up all night. I mean, it was just extraordinary writing. But to your point, the mystery thing, I love that. I mean, who doesn't want to play? I mean, it's like built-in intrigue, you can only benefit as an actor from a character that is mysterious. But also, I love, but it's specific to this character. I mean, he's sort of the...
Are you a good guy or a bad guy?
I don't even know.
We need to figure that out.
Oh, yeah. Let's not figure that out for a while. Just don't kill me, Freddie, all right? I was on the
I think
plane.
Freddie threw the gauntlet down tonight.
I know.
Clear.
Oh, I was sat with him on the plane on the way from New York from Upfronts, and we talked about this, and I said, we're friends now. So if it's on the page, you have to protest that you will not kill me. So
I refuse to kill anyone in it. Yeah.
But no, the mystery thing, I love it. But to the point of this character, yeah, he's got definitely different sides to him. I'd love to see some, other elements to him, but I'm sure that, we'll find out next season.
Nicola, in the original Psycho movie, it was not kind to pretty blonde women. What did you anticipate coming into this? In many ways, your character is the prototypical, high school boy's fantasy. How do you take the character beyond that? In fact, many of the scenes are fantasy moments in his head, with you. How, what was important for you to bring to that character other than this boy's fantasy?
I like to think of her as the untraditional Queen Bee because I really believe that she is a kind girl and a good person. And she just, when she loses her dad, she deals with her grief in the wrong way by sleeping with Norman. And I think he takes it differently and then as he should, and I understand why he took it that way.
Norman's the woman.
I hope I don't die soon.
We're sensing a trend here. Freddie's comfortable, everyone else is on it.
Everybody's hoping.
Yeah.
Everybody else is just hoping and trying to be friends with Freddie.
Max, what a transition. Carlton talked about a little bit. Your first episode, you come on strong.
Yeah.
And you come on very rough to these two characters right here. And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna hate this guy.
Yeah.
And
I think everybody did.
And for a little while,
I hated myself.
and for a little while I did, but I found myself, and it was a gradual process. And you get towards the end of the season, and I will confess that I've seen not only this episode, but the finale, which is terrific, and I encourage you guys to watch it. He almost becomes the most sympathetic character, I would say, in the show. It's a male character. The most sympathetic male character in the show. Talk about that transition and how, when you have to come on that strong.
Yeah, it's funny because it was this constant battle in the beginning, and when Tucker was directing it, it's like every scene I would walk into, he'd be like, just be more mean. Just be more mean to them. Always just be mean, always. He's like, go in there and just like walk into this room like this is your house and you don't give a, about anything. And so I'm like, really? Like, yeah. He's like, just go in there and just tear up their house. I'm like, all right. And so like I'm sitting there and I'm kind of thinking as we're filming, like, God, people are gonna hate me. I'm like an ass. I'm feeling really rude. I'm being like really disrespectful to my mom, like all these things, but obviously, it sets up for Dylan to kind of to change and to evolve into who we learn he is.
the most sympathetic pot farm protector I know. Now, Vera, I saw you react there. You were standing up for your character. Tell us what you view as sympathetic. Well, you know,
I think to a certain degree we've all had an uphill climb, coming off of kind of Psycho has, the good mommy image is forever tarnished for Norma, and also, due to the Freudians and kind of their mommy takes the rap, I feel. But, I don't know.
What do you sympathize most about her? What do you like most about Norma?
I think she's like a fact, man. She is determined in her love for this child. I have a sympathy for her. You can reduce the story down to this is a troubled woman who is trying to give her troubled son a life that is enhancing to him. And there's no clear route, there's no clear path as to how a mother who has a neurologically dysfunctional, atypical child makes him healthier or better, especially if she herself isn't that healthy. And, I have no choice but to make a case for her. And like, I don't know, that's what's so fascinating to me. I think psychological studies will say that the brain in love and the brain in mental illness is like has a certain kind of crossover, and and that brain scan is what I'm like studying right now. That Norma, and I know I really do think that it's not a case of like whether she didn't love him enough. I
don't think anybody thinks she didn't love him enough. No, I mean that's what makes, I mean this in the best possible way. Your relationship is so fascinating because there is such love there. If she didn't care about him, what would, it wouldn't be so nearly interesting to watch.
I know she makes mistakes. She doesn't always do the right thing. She's still kind of trying to determine, where that umbilical cord should be, released. It should be.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like she cannot free him into autonomy or independence yet. He is sick and unstable.
How aware of that is she? Because in the show, we see him fantasizing, have these moments and these visions, but we don't seem to be aware that you're aware of it always. How sick does she think Norman is?
Look, I think, and this is where we argue about, this is, because I approach any of the sensuality
Discuss.
in a very innocent way. And I think for Norma, I think that there's this Tinberger theory, I've researched it a while. It's basically holding therapy. Norma thinks that, she probably thinks that his anxiety-induced emotional conflict has something to do with bonding, as is evident from her first failed attempt at maternity. So her cure is to bond, and that's the grip that she has on him. She's going to love him through his madness, and hope, but the thing is, you'll find about Norma is like she herself is troubled, and she is this this dam of a lifetime of craziness, and if she lets that fissure crack, so she keeps like sandpacking the dam, because if she lets that fissure, if she opens herself to, she's a real, roll up your sleeves, chin up kind of woman, and for her that involves, holding therapy, attachment therapy.
Freddie, what's your favorite part of Norman Bates?
I guess it's that, the chance to play those different sides to him. and we see that more, you know, as the first season develops. You know, the divisions within his personality and these other spaces that he goes into, and that's just been intriguing. And it's also working with Vera on that. You know, I think in the 7th episode where we kind of see him speaking through his mother's voice and having that as a kind of internal. Another person within him coming out and trying to express it themselves. And I remember we kind of sat down before and came up with that voice so that it would be replicated in the 2 scenes and they would mirror each other.
For those of us of a certain generation, Psycho was a big deal. For your generation, how big a deal or not a big a deal is that movie? How familiar were you with the movie?
No, I'd seen Psycho beforehand. I think when I was 14 for the first time, which people seem to think, oh, it's a bit young to see it. But what's great about Psycho is it's not, there's nothing explicitly wrong with a 14-year-old seeing it. It's what goes on in your mind, and I think that's what I really enjoyed about the Bates Motel scripts. You know, that suggestive as opposed to conclusive nature, and that to a large extent comes from that. You know, suspense that Hitchcock was so great at.
What's the best thing about her as an actress?
Well, Vera, I was going to say it is a great thing, but it also, I guess, you're also slightly envious. Vera's just so effortlessly natural, and I'm sure it takes a lot of effort to get there, but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't seem that way when you're in a scene with her. You know that she's completely there. You know, giving it everything at every single moment. And it's also the chance to play with stuff in the scene itself, as opposed to coming with a kind of preconceived idea of, which you do to a certain extent, of how you want the scene to go. But even in the middle of the scene, you know, Vera is kind of capable of changing stuff up and finding this new range of emotion. It's kind of constantly working, but at the same time seeming like she's not.
What's the best thing about Freddie as an actor?
His willingness and his openness, and like any dance partner, you know, he's not afraid of being led or leading and having that switch, and he's a great in improvising, you know, and there's a certain level of, like, there's a candid honesty we have with each other when something's not working or when we need help, and we rely on each other a lot. And I really admire his intellect and his awareness and his humor above all, you know, because it's just like, you're not gonna have a lukewarm attitude about each other playing these characters. You're either gonna love each other, you're gonna hate each other. And I just have such a deep affection for him. I admire him, you know.
It's
He makes
lucky
me
we
a better
got on,
actor.
really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's lucky.
Carrie, we don't have Olivia here today, who plays Emma, but I want to talk about her character a little bit. We talked a little bit before the panel about a character with cystic fibrosis and CF. I talked about how I investigated that once in a script I read. I'm fascinated with that disease and what that does to somebody. Where did the idea come from, you know, to do this, and what does Olivia bring, you know, to that role of a teenage girl dealing with that disease?
It felt really intriguing to put into this sort of arch world of life and death someone who actually was very, in a real way, very much dealing with life and death on a daily basis. It just, I don't know why, it just seemed like a really interesting combination. And I have a very good friend who has CF, so I knew, you know, a lot about it and living with it. And, you know, the thing that I always admired was that it didn't define him. You know, it was sort of the part of him. He was just like, yeah, well, there's that, you know. And it's like, but he just still had all his, you know, goals and wanted to do stuff. And the idea of a teenage girl who would have a connection with Norman because instinctively she could feel that he understood sadness or pain or isolation, and even though they never say that out loud, they both kind of sense that in each other, you know. It's like a secret club of the damaged, you know. And I think, you know, she's if Norman Bates could be saved, I think Emma could have done it. I think she's hugely important to him, and that will develop more.
So she's safe for a little while.
She might outlive
She
everybody.
said could have saved him.
Fair enough. Carrie and Carlton, what's the most difficult thing about writing these scripts?
Gosh, it's just everything. I mean,
Everybody's crazy. They're exhausting. I mean, that's actually true. You know, it's like sometimes at the end of writing one of them, like I am so, you know, because you live through it while you're writing it, and I'm so exhausted at the end of it. I mean, I remember when we were doing the last few episodes, I kept just texting Carlton going, these people are all crazy. You know,
but when you're in it, they don't really feel crazy. Like you kind of,
No,
I mean, you
it's
have to like be able to get inside the heads of the character. And I think, as Vera said, you know, you have to completely sympathize and understand
Yes.
them on their journeys. And I think that we so wanted to write the scripts and be with the characters. You know, we didn't want the audience sort of looking down at the characters and saying, oh, you know, sort of pathologically and sort of saying, oh, that person's damaged or this person's damaged. We wanted to write the script so the audience was always with the characters, that we were with Norma, we were with Norman, we were with Dylan.
That's why it's exhausting.
But it is
Because you are
exhausting.
with them.
But it is.
It's
But
like-
it's hard to write these kinds of stories and
Yeah.
also, you know, hopefully make the audience feel like they're fully engaged with the characters.
But yeah, and when I say they're crazy, I don't mean that in a judgmental way. I really don't. I mean, they feel things big. You know, it's not.
passionate.
They're passionate.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, you can do the, you know, like, I mean, the scene where you're driving around the driveway and he jumps in the car. I mean, that's intense. You know, that's like that's major awesome dysfunction.
A generic question, but maybe it'll give something more interesting than a generic answer. What were you looking for in directors for this show? What was important for you that they have to bring to the show?
A filmic quality. I mean, I think that, you know, we really wanted the show to feel cinematic, that was sort of a kind of a hallmark of Hitchcock's movies, and that, you know, that was another element that we really were consciously borrowing from the movies, was how great a visual storyteller Hitchcock was, and particularly the whole kind of thriller quality to it, you know, where time sort of slows down. So in the pilot, for instance, once Keith Summers is killed, you know, the amount of time it takes for them to clean up the mess and move the body, and how difficult it is, and how do you dispose of it, and all that was, you know, very, you know, Hitchcockian. And, you know, and Tucker Gates, who's our producing director, is, you know, fabulously talented, and, you know, really, and he directed 5 of the 10 hours, and when he wasn't directing, he was helping to guide the other directors who came in. And, you know, that was, I think when you watch the show, it feels, I think, more cinematic than a lot of television shows, and that was kind of an element that we definitely wanted.
And I think also because the subject is so dark and sad that we really wanted it to actually look physically sort of gorgeous, you know, to have a beauty to it, so it wasn't just relentlessly dark, you know. And
But there's
Tucker,
also humor too. I mean, you know, I think that was, we
Yeah.
wanted, like, I think there are other serial killer shows that are really straight. I mean, if you watch The Following and Hannibal, I mean, they're really well made, but the tone is very consistently dark. I mean, I think that we tried to you know, I think this episode you guys saw tonight, I mean, there's a lot of levity. I mean, you've got, you know, Emma eating pot brownies and Norma telling off Raouf on the porch, and which is just like my favorite scene ever. And, you know, I mean, those aren't scenes that you expect to find in a show that's ostensibly about a serial killer, but we don't ever really think that we're writing a show about a serial killer.
Yeah.
We're writing a show about a family.
Alfred Hitchcock famously appeared in all his movies. I believe in the movie Lifeboat, it required a picture of him in an ad floating by in the water. But are we ever going to get an Alfred Hitchcock sighting, even in a picture or something in the background of one of these?
By the way, there's a great Hitchcock story. I don't know if it's true or not. Apparently, during Lifeboat, it was before they had video monitors, so the cameraman came to him and said, Mr. Hitchcock, in the shot you set up, it appears that Miss Tandy, Jessica Tandy, is not wearing any underwear. What do you want? And Hitchcock apparently responded, well, what should I do? Call hair, makeup, or wardrobe?
Top that. So you're passing on the Hitchcock appearance in the. We'll see. Maybe.
I mean, I
something.
do my, previously on Bates Motel.
That's right. There you go.
Nestor, what's your favorite part of your character?
Well, certainly for this season, it has been working mostly with Vera and getting to work with her. But just as an observer of the show, you're talking about sort of the cinematic aspects of it. I mean, just at the heart of it, you have these two incredible dynamics. You have the Oedipal one, and then you have this sort of East of Eden thing, where you have the James Dean character vying for the love of the parent. In this case, it's a mom. So you can play around and have those great Raouf scenes because you have this. The show is so grounded in these incredibly, powerful dynamics. So just viewing the show, it's just interesting for me on that level. But for me, so far, having to work, with Vera and sort of butt heads with her has been a dream.
There is not a bad scene between Nestor and Vera. I mean, those scenes, like watching them in dailies, it's just like they just explode off the screen. Seriously.
Nicola, how does the high school that you're in this show compare to the high school that you went to? I'm assuming less dangerous.
Less dangerous, definitely. I think in some ways it's actually really relatable, like all the high school scenes in the high school world, because, I mean, everyone in high school, at least that I know, or from my experience, deals with all that drama, like the boys and the cliques and the who likes who and all that. And I think that's another reason why I love doing the show and why, my friends love it, and I feel like you can relate to those scenes and yeah.
And how has the character turned out to be different than than what you anticipated when you first got the role?
I'm really happy that we're not playing her as just what you expect, like the bitchy popular girl who's just mean to Norman, and it's not like that at all. And she really does like Norman and care for him and didn't want to hurt him, and I love their relationship. I think it's really unique and relatable in some ways.
Max, talk about Dylan a little bit. What I've asked everybody what their favorite part is. What's your least favorite part about Dylan?
I honestly don't really have one. I know that sounds like the obvious, stupid, like cliche answer, but honestly, everything about him is a lot of fun, and it's also just a lot of fun to be able to kind of screw up their world a little bit, and to be able to kind of mess with their dynamic, and to also be so close to it, and just to watch how they interact, how Norma and Norman. Like Nestor said, like it's just the show's just it's a lot of fun to work on because everybody's so talented, and it's always just like honestly like a pleasure being on set, and always really creative and a lot of fun. So it doesn't feel like you don't feel like you're going to work at any time, even the ridiculous hours that we have sometimes, like it's still like it's always really creative and fun, and every day's different, and every episode is different, and it's constantly changing, which is fun.
Talk about working with Freddie on the show. It's a very complicated, intricate relationship between these two brothers, half brothers, really. How's that bond between those characters different from the bond between you two actors?
Freddie and I are a lot closer in real life than Dylan and Norman. But yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's just fun to play with because there'll be scenes, you know, that are so different from what we're like towards each other normally, and so it's a lot of fun to be able to play off those. Like the one scene that we had a lot of fun with was when we're driving to the dock or back from the dock in episode 6. Is it episode 6?
Yeah.
And
5 or 6. Yeah.
and we just like when we were shooting that, we just had like a really good time. It was like Freddie and I were bonding like in real life, but also in the scene, and so I think it kind of really came off as being that, and we kind of got lost for a little bit because we sort of went on this long tangent of like nonsense. But I mean, it's always you know, a lot of fun, and Freddie's always so professional when it comes time to filming. He kind of he keeps me in shape every once in a while. I'll get out of line.
I had more questions I want to ask. I'm told it's time for you guys to ask the questions, so we're going to open up to the audience.
I don't think you'll be disappointed. I mean, were you disappointed at the end of Titanic?
Is this a show that you think can run 6, 7 years long, or is the nature of the storytelling perhaps shorter than that? What's your ideal plan? How long does this show run for?
What is your ideal plan?
I don't think it is not an infinite length show. I mean, it definitely is a show with a beginning, middle, and end. I think that this season will answer that question for us. I mean, I think that we need to get a little deeper into our storytelling to figure out exactly how long we need to tell our whole story. So I'm dodging the question.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I guess yes and no. I'd seen Psycho, and then I did rewatch it a couple of times before we started shooting, and I guess that was one source of inspiration. But on the other hand, it was never a kind of an attempt to set out and mimic him. We all felt free to have a kind of fresh start and see how it's also how Norman gets to that position that we see Anthony Perkins in. And I guess it was kind of what Carlton was saying. It's important not to do too much too early. And it's so tempting when you have a character that you kind of know how he ends up. You're like, oh, we can, or a relationship where you think you might know, where it might go. To do so much at the start and kind of show everything off that you imagine about these characters. But it's also a matter of kind of holding back and letting that develop naturally and in an unforced, kind of unrushed manner, which is what the luxury of television. You have a longer period on which to tell those stories.
It's like playing Hamlet, as an actor. You're not going to do it the way, you saw the Hamlet that you saw for the first time do it. You're going to try to make it your own,
Yeah, I guess I saw it not only as an iconic kind of take, but also as an iconic character in his own right, Thank
you.
In season 2, definitely every character on the show will be attractive. Yeah, no, I mean, that's the teacher is there's something kind of like odd about her, isn't there? It's very interesting. Yes, that's a very good observation. I'd want to know more.
Maybe we'll learn more in the finale. Yeah.
I mean, that was just one of those, again, April and Sarah Isaacson, our casting directors, brought him in for this part. And, it's always hard when you have kind of a villainous character like this. You're kind of looking for a way to put a spin on, him that's different. And Jerry was somebody that she brought up as just as a possibility for us. And it just felt like we should take that risk, that we should give, that he is an actor who we really admired, and we just thought, as opposed to going to the more conventional, like, heavy, let's take a shot and see if he can do something different with this role. And he just nailed it. I mean, it was just like, it's so fun to watch him in the show. And, you know, there's more to come. Thanks, that's a good question.
Like I said, she's got a major floodgate. And
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the storytelling, definitely. What makes a woman like Norma Bates? How does that happen? And you'll find out in bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great.
Listen to everyone watching or listening on live stream. To all of you here in the audience, thank you so much for coming today. Let's thank the cast and creators of the show of Bates Motel.